Hi, I'm George Nordhaus, and welcome to Monday Morning. Unusual one this morning because it's going to be the basics, the very basics of what a lot of agencies should be doing and haven't been doing over these years, and that's applying the 80-20 rule to your personal lines. We'll talk about it. Deborah Miller-Pfahler is the presenter. And let me tell you about Deborah. Let me show her to you. She's an entrepreneur. She's done a wonderful job over the years. I've known her for most of the years she's been in business. We've worked together a lot because back in a number of years ago, she was with State Farm for a long time, but she was the number 2 person for the number 1 producer, Cosmo Connie, for the number 1 company in the world. How do you like that? And she learned so much about what can you say about State Farm that already hadn't been said, but she is, then she came back, was a consultant to State Auto. She's built something called Relational Sales Pro, is a very unique kind of business. But what she did was in the process learn not only what sells on personal lines, how to sell on personal lines, but how to utilize the automated equipment and everything else you have. And I think she's the number 1 authority on that subject in the country, and that's why I kind of made her my partner. And yes, she is a partner in another new program, another new business that we have called Ina Connect. You're going to hear about that. She's the president. Between her and Val Jordan, my other partner on Agencies Online, I found 2 of the very best in the country, and I'm proud I at least can pick out those. Deborah, let's talk about the 80-20 rule. How about that?
The 80-20 rule, in my opinion, is one of the most important things that agencies need to focus on right now in the personal lines arena.
Well, everybody's talking about 80-20 all our lives. What the heck they mean?
Well, the 80-20 rule means that 80% of your revenues comes from only 20% of the book of business that you have. And that means that 80% of your time should be spent on those folks developing those accounts and not focused on those who are needy, who are focused entirely on price, those who you cannot cultivate as advocate clients. You know, I have been in the industry for a long time. I've seen an awful lot that has changed, but the one thing, in my opinion, that is critical right now is to focus on retention. We all know that it costs far more money to bring on a new client than it does to retain a client. And I believe, and you probably can correct me on this, but I think it takes 4 to 5 years to recoup your acquisition cost, which, interestingly enough, is about the time that most folks leave if they have not been serviced correctly. So what I want to do is really talk about how can we identify those folks that you should consider releasing from your agency, however you feel is most appropriate with them.
Well, you know, for agents, there were all these years, oh, we give the greatest service in town. Service. Well, that's another story, but I used to have a kind of a dirty joke about service, but I don't think I better use it today. But it's just not service by itself is simply not enough.
Well, and you know, most agencies say that service is their unique business advantage, and I do believe that service is one of the key factors. However, you cannot service all clients equally, or in my opinion, if you're going to be successful, if you're going to focus on retention, if you're going to focus on building up that select group that is within your agency that's high profit, that has the ability to refer folks to you, you cannot service equally. And that means that you've got individuals that are draining your staff members that you need to consider whether or not they truly are a profit maker for you or not. You know, so often I can remember working in management, and I would have staff members that would just get off the telephone and they were just so exasperated. They were so frustrated, and I can even remember a couple of instances where they literally had to leave the office to compose themselves because they had been on the phone with somebody that the agency felt was a key client, but in fact they were a very demanding client, and unfortunately it created poor morale for everybody who was around them. And that costs an agency a lot of money when you think about how difficult it is to bring on quality employees. And if you have an environment where you seem to be catering to high-demand individuals that can be abusive in the fact that they believe because they give you such an amount of premium that you should be at their beck and call. It really does create a difficult environment, and therefore people will get notice and hear that, you know, if people are subject to that, they won't want to work with you. You know, the McKinsey report in 2012 came out with some very interesting statistics, and one of the facts that really just stood out to me was 65% of the clients who left an agency never talked to the agency before they left. 65% of them never talked to the agent. Now, how many of those folks could have been cultivated into a loyal advocate within the agency if, in fact, staff members were not devoting their time and their energies towards those who had no growth potential?
Let me tell you a story. I'm here in Santa Fe, and I've been with an agent, and he is, and I like him as a human being and very much. And but at any rate, and he insures. It's one of the biggest agencies in the world, and he sold to one of the biggest agencies in the world. Nobody from that agency has ever talked to me in the last 3 years. Never. And you know, if I were somebody else, I'd probably leave him in a flash. But that's another story. No, but they have never even given me a phone call. And that's go
amazing.
Ahead. Sorry to interrupt, but boy, it pisses me off. Go ahead.
Well, you know, the thing that is so interesting is those who do not have claims that oftentimes have a number of policies with an agency are the ones who are just forgotten about.
Yep.
Unless you are beating on the doors or you are screaming the loudest, many times agencies don't have anything in place to actually reach out and cultivate and tell those who are not creating the chatter in their agency how valuable they truly are. And that's one of the things I believe that can be addressed very easily if we do consider this 80-20 rule. So let's get into that and really look at how that 80-20 rule can come into place. There's two important factors, in my opinion. The first is to grade your existing client base. Now, grading your client base is something that may be unusual, if you will, in the insurance industry, but you know, the accounting industry and the law industry has had this in place for a very long time. And they truly understand that if you are going to put your resources someplace, you need to truly focus them on where the greatest profitability and productivity can come. So I suggest that in this whole process of grading that you ask your staff members at your next meeting, just ask your staff members at the next meeting, give me the names of 3 of the most difficult clients that you have to deal with that zap your energy. And I can tell you they're on the top of their head. They'll know exactly who they are. So, in addition to simply asking your staff, I think it's important that you have some means of truly identifying the entirety of your book. You may have individuals in your book that are marginal, that can be moved up if you have the time to cultivate them. So what I'm going to suggest is that you develop a scorecard. And this scorecard is actually going to have the criteria that is most important to your agency's bottom line in your community against your competition.
You know what? I've been listening to that. I've been hearing this thing for years and years and years. The agency says those are our A clients, B clients, and C clients. I wonder really how many of them talk a better game than they really do. Amazing that that they haven't. Every agency has to have its own scorecards. Every agency is different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every agency is different, absolutely. Every agency is different. But what is nice, once they can truly evaluate their book of business and they can identify the criteria of those who are most profitable, those who have the greatest ability to be the advocate for the agency, then they will know when they are focusing on bringing on new business that this is the demographic of the type of prospect that they want to pursue. You know, writing business just for the sake of writing business is not always the best thing to do. You could write less business in a target and be far more profitable than if you write a broad spectrum of business. This whole philosophy of throw it all against the wall and see what sticks, because that typically is what is costing you money.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we look at grading our clients and developing this scorecard? I think the first thing that's most important is we cannot be fooled by automatically looking at who pays us how much money, because many times those who do pay you a lot of money can be real problems to deal with, because they have this expectation that you owe it to them because they are giving you that revenues. So what I would like for the agencies to consider when they're creating the scorecard is to set that equation aside. Yes, it's important, but it is not as important as some other factors. For example, if you're going to be looking at what impacts the bottom line, profitability, retention factors in the agencies, to look at the number and the type of policies that this individual has. More importantly, what is the potential for the account? Not just in cross-selling the auto, the home, and adding the umbrella, but all of the other potentials. Is this individual self-employed? If so, then you have an entire new profit stream. Do they have a large network of centers of influence? Are they profitable? What is their payment history? You know, a lot of principals think that, well, the staff cost is all a part of doing business, and yes, it is. But if you have a staff member having to write and rewrite and write and rewrite and write and rewrite, and all of what is necessary, if you factor in all of the time that is spent on that, think about how much time you could be focused on cultivating or creating a review or something like that for somebody who has a greater potential.
Deborah,
Yes.
what bothers me on this list here, are you asking the CSRs to make these decisions, to find out this stuff? Because it's personal lines. Yeah?
I think CSRs absolutely have to be involved in this, but I think truly the decision of the entirety of the criteria has to come from the top down. But the CSRs are the best person to actually look at the entire account and to help the principals make a decision on this.
All right.
Because, you know, here again, those individuals that can be profitable, I know, for example, in my situation, I have maybe 5 or 6 policies with the agency that I'm with. I haven't had a claim for probably 14 years, so I don't have need to communicate with them. So if I were in most agencies, I'd just get lost.
Mm-hmm.
So
what about your
again,
agency? Does he contact you?
Oh, I hear from my agency all the time. I get a phone call when, in fact, I get a phone call for my birthday. They even know my husband and my anniversary, and they call to congratulate me every year.
That's nice.
So all of those things go hand in hand in saying, wow, that agent really understands me, and so therefore I am valuable. So now let's look at the opposite side of this. When you take a look at who you do have that is profitable, then you need to consider doing something with those who are not profitable. And what do those people look like? Well, they may have the reoccurring payment issues. They may be difficult to work with. They may be disrespectful. You know, this is the one thing that I believe so strongly that management constantly needs to be talking with their staff. Are you involved in conversations with individuals that don't respect you, that are abusive in some way? Do they expect you to be at their beck and call? Here's a good one. Are they honest with you, or are they slightly on the edge of that truth factor? Do they want to micromanage everything that you're doing? Do they constantly call you back and back and back? Did you? You know, when you take a look at the whole ease of doing business, these folks are really difficult. And has their business taken a different direction? Are they moving as a family, as a unit, in a direction that is different than when you originally insured them? And I cannot emphasize, please have your staff involved in this process. They are the ones who are on the front line, and they definitely are the ones who are going to help you in making this decision. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I believe, too, that by bringing the staff into this equation, you show them a greater sense of respect. They feel like they have a very important role in the agency. They feel important. And with that, they're going to truly do a better job in redirecting their time and their efforts towards putting into motion something that will cultivate that better relationship with your centers of influence. Now, what are you going to do with those folks? 10%, 20% that are truly just draining you? It is difficult to fire. It is absolutely difficult, but there are some ways, perhaps, that you can make it a little less intimidating. And the first thing is to limit the amount of time that you spend with these folks. Now, they're calling you, they may have need, yes, but on the other hand, if they're calling asking for your attention, demanding your attention, spread out the amount of time that you're going to be spending with them. Take longer in replying to them. If they ask for a particular producer, that producer may be servicing other clients on the telephone. So all these little ways of making it a little bit more difficult to have access to you. You want to give them plenty of advance notice, however it is that you're going to do, or whatever it is that you're going to do. Refer them out. You may find that someone else in your community may have a temperament that is going to be better suited for them. And you might even recommend that they call that individual. I think you told me, if I recall correctly, that you knew of somebody that after they had graded their book of business, they actually even sold the block of business.
I thought it was
tremendous. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, and I had never heard that before. And this is a fabulous agent. It's a long story, but at any rate, he out in California, but he sold this last 20% or whatever for 1.25 commissions. How do you like that? Annual commissions, 1.25. He sold the whole block, and then didn't tell him it was a watch. He just, I don't know what he told him, but nonetheless, he got a 1.25 cash.
And I'm sure that since he was wise enough to even understand that that was the lowest portion of his own book, he probably then put something into place to really cultivate that upper tier, that 20%.
You know he did. That's how he got rich.
Yeah. Well, another thing is to announce a massive price hike. Now, we don't necessarily want to lie, but we could make suggestions that with the claim frequency, they are going to be seeing increases, that many circumstances are occurring in the industry. In other words, let them be aware ahead of time that it might be in their best interest to consider looking elsewhere. Well,
okay, I think you've covered this is the basics. This is exactly what we wanted to hear, just exactly the philosophy behind what we need to do on the 80-20 rule. I do know, and of course you and I are working together, and you've developed a program which is the most amazing one ever in our history, where most of this or all of this stuff is done electronically. I mean, at least measured using your, well, I won't go any further than that though, but it's just amazing. And you'll be hearing a lot about it. How they can get hold of you if they like.
They can, absolutely. Oops.
Yeah, they got to learn more about the client gradation. Let me tell you how to get hold of Deborah. You can go to call her at 614-560-7134. That's her phone number, and she'll tell you about the thing. It's amazing, and you'll learn about client gradation, and it's just an amazing, amazing program that she's done. In the meantime, don't forget to go back to your email and get the and see the E&O tip of the week and get the 5 test, a quiz flash. It's always there. It's always, Deborah, thank you very much for
You're
this.
so welcome.
Well, these are the basics. We'll get more and more and more in the details as things go along. So let's, to the rest of you, see you next Monday morning. And one last thought, show every one of your CSRs today's Monday morning. Okay? See you then.